Welcome back, guys. This is CIT 225. The title of the course is Network Security and Penetration Testing, and we are covering the material from the book, which is the Guide to Computer Forensics and Investigations. Again, a disclaimer, whatever we are covering in this course is purely for academic purposes. If you are using it for anything other than academic purposes, you are solely responsible for your own actions. Okay. So we covered up to the topic last time where we were talking about maintaining a professional conduct towards investigation. Now we are talking about an overview of a computer crime. Just like any other crime out there in the market, since people are stealing a lot of money online and they are using the fake identities in order to show or present themselves for what they are not actually. So that's why there is a high demand of people who are investigating that, who are the guys or the teams behind all these online banking and thefts and espionage and stealing the information from the accounts. Computers can contain information about lots of things, which helps the law enforcement agencies to find the chain of events leading to a crime. Now that's very important because the information which is being stolen as a result of a breach or any penetration in the network, they'll have to investigate that what kind of information is it and where can it be used actually. And once they'll come up with those things, they will have an idea about understanding of the crime scene, that how much information has been stolen and where potentially it could be used, or there are any chances of that information being used somewhere. Very important to know the chain of events which are leading to any kind of activities like that. Law enforcement officers should follow the proper procedures when acquiring the evidence, and we discussed that you must maintain the evidence in a way that the original things or the information on those hard drives should not be altered in any way. Digital evidence can be easily altered and can be overrigged investigator. Now, just to mention one thing, when we were talking about chain of command, we must understand another concept, that there are some backup techniques available out there with the help of which we create the entire backup of the hard drive, including all the hash codes and everything, which will be replicated to the backup wherever we are maintaining the backups. The main reason of doing that is we want to preserve the original evidence which is there, and we don't want to run our softwares on those kind of things where at the end we'll find out that the original evidence has been altered. That's why the first thing that we do is, as soon as we find out a machine which has been compromised or which has been a part of any espionage or any kind of breach inside the network, the first thing we do is we preserve the original asset. We create a complete block level backup of that hard drive so that we can run multiple softwares on it in order to retrieve the data. Now, the data retrieval takes a lot of time depending on how big is the hard drive and how deep are you actually trying to recover the data. The recovery of the data could be done in a single phase or in multiple phases. In our experience, what we have done is that we took the hard drives, we created a complete backup, we mashed the hash codes, making sure that it's 100% replica of the original hard disk or the computer which was compromised. Then we use multiple softwares on different computers in order to recover the data, because every software takes its own time. Maybe one software would complete it in 12 to 14 hours, the other software might take 24 to 48 hours. And then once we'll have an output of it, we'll compare it, and then we'll see that maybe some data was there which you couldn't retrieve through the software one, but you'll be able to do it through the software too. We are going to conduct a lab in this week in which we'll tell you some softwares with the help of which we'll be able to do these kind of things. Now that would be the basic softwares which are available for testing purposes. There are highly sophisticated softwares available out there, but as far as this course is concerned, we'll be limiting ourselves to the softwares which could be used for the academic purposes as far as this course is concerned. Now digital, we have covered it. It could be altered anyway, so all efforts shall be made that where your original hard drive and the data on the drive should not be altered or changed. Whatever you're doing, you must be investigating on the hard drive for which you have created the backup. Employee misusing the resources can cost companies millions of dollars. That's what we see it on regular basis on the network. Take for example a very small example of abuse of the resources could be the photocopiers or the printers or the scanners which are available in an organization. People just use it without knowing that these things are used or must be used purely for their professional activities. They spend a lot of time watching movies or soccer matches or even seasons on Netflix. We found out on the network that there were some guys who were enjoying Netflix on the corporate network, which was later blocked using our firewalls. Then sending personal emails, using the personal emails for personal communications, and then using computers at work for their own personal tasks or their own personal activities. Now, we must be taking a systematic approach towards investigation. Steps on problem solving could be make the initial assessment report, then determine the preliminary design through which you'll be reaching towards the final conclusion, or the steps which could help you towards reaching the final conclusion. You must have a complete checklist based on the previous investigations that you ever conducted on any hard drive, any web shell attack, or if a shell was dropped on your Linux server or on Windows IIS server. So you must have certain rules and techniques that you followed earlier written somewhere. So you're making sure that you're not missing out any step or any findings which helped you in investigating your previous report. Obtain a copy of the evidence of the original hard drive and then work on that, and then identify the risk where this penetrator would have penetrated other than entering this computer and on the network. Then mitigate or minimize the risks in order to protect the other computers nearby. If after the findings you find out that there were some weaknesses in the operating system or the patches were not rightly or professionally applied to the computers, you must make or you must adopt the latest strategies towards that, making sure that all the latest patches and updates has been applied and forced towards the computers or the machines which are critical, which are holding lot of important information about the organization. Investigate the data you recover and complete the case report, and then sit together and critique the same case, that what could be the other possible scenarios in that. The other is systematically outline the case details by the situation, nature of the case, and specify the case that how much impact it has in an overall organization. Now, disk format plays an important role as well, because your tools towards investigation differ if you are working on a Windows environment or a Linux server or it was a Mac machine. Location of the evidence, whether it was on campus or it was outside the office, or someone used their computers or the laptops, laptops, tablets or mobile phones in order to penetrate in the network. Now, in order to plan for the investigation, the basic investigation plan includes acquiring the evidence as we discussed earlier, then complete the evidence from establishing a chain of custody who's responsible to take up which task, and transport the evidence to the forensics lab If you and or your organization is not capable of conducting the forensics analysis of the hard drives yourself, it's better to outsource that or to send it to an organization which is specialized in assessing and investigating the hard drives or any kind of digital assets. Secure your evidence, as we discussed last time, that they must be stored in a place which is the optimum environment for the hard drives. They must not be exposed to the sunlight, and they must be prone to any kind of shocks or jerks which might affect the head of the hard drive or the cylinders of the hard drive, and you might end up losing something from the hard drives. Making a forensics copy, as I explained earlier, that we must use some softwares with the help of which we can create a block level bare metal backup of the hard drive, and then make sure you're matching the hashes, making sure that it's 100% replica of the hard disk which was the prime target. Now, the evidence custody form should be filled in. It must have a single evidence form or a multiple evidence form depending on your kind of environment, and in our book they are giving some examples of these forms. If they are helpful, you can use them. Otherwise, some organizations design their own forms depending on the kind of business they are in and what kind of problems that they could have potentially faced because of these kind of attacks. Now, in order to secure the evidence, you must have the evidence bag, anti-static, and anti-static pads should be there inside, with the help of which they are securing it. Use the evidence tape to seal, and make sure you are writing the initials on it, that no one has opened it, and it must have a proper date and sequence, IP address, and stuff like that. Any details which could be helpful in investigation, you can write the labels on it, and then write the initials on the tape. Consider that the computer specific temperatures and humidity as explained earlier. So next is we are talking about procedure for private sector high-tech investigation, that the investigator must have a formal procedure. That's for when we covered about private and public sector investigation, and the employee termination cases in which we could terminate or we could decide based on the outcomes of the report. The majority of the investigation work for termination cases involves employee abuse or corporate assets. Incident that create a hostile work environment where the other persons cannot comfortably work in that kind of environment, or using an official email account to send inappropriate emails to your colleagues or to the higher management. Organizations must have appropriate policies where they must clearly tell that official email and computers must be used for which kind of communications. And if someone is using or if someone is abusing the policy or not following the rules and regulations of the company, where what should be the consequences of it, usually they ask them to follow the policies. If not, usually the companies are giving them some warnings, and after that in some cases they do terminate the employee, or they disable the internet or email access from those kind of employees, which is a bit difficult these days because most of the work which is available, what we are doing in the offices, requires the usage of email and internet communications. So there should be a department in HR or the counseling department which should be discussing with the guys, making sure that they are not discouraged toward reaching the higher management in order to discuss what they have in their own minds. Now, internet abuses, organization internet proxy server logs should be maintained, where we keep a log of each and every individual, their internet presence, whatever they were doing over the passage of time. Now, the main idea is not to follow the guys or to intervene in someone's privacy, but those things are usually opened, these kind of logs, if, for example, we find out that a computer or an account has been compromised. So we open the log to check that since when it was happening that someone was using these kind of these accounts in order to perform certain activities within the network or outside the network. We maintain the suspect IP address and the disk drive which that individual was using. Your preferred computer forensic analysis tool, that depends from organization to organization that what kind of tools you are using for forensics analysis. Use standard forensic analysis techniques which are the baseline techniques available out there. You can follow them, but they are not limited to these guidelines which are being mentioned in this book. Things are changing rapidly. If you have any other new tools, techniques, or anything which could help you towards your investigation, use those. There are lots of free tools available and paid versions available out there. Some tools claim that they are free, but don't use them for professional investigation activities, because we have seen in some cases they'll recover, they'll find out that things has been found on the hard drive, but once you'll try to recover those things from the hard drive which were deleted at that time, they would ask you to pay in order to recover the stuff from the hard drive. So that's a total wastage of time that you spent around about 12 or 14 hours in order to recover the stuff, but you cannot actually recover it unless you have the paid license for those things. So test your software before you use them for any kind of professional activities. Contact the network firewall administrators and the proxy server logs. Compare the data recovered from the forensics tools if the hash code is matching, and then use your analyze the disk data drive, the data that you found on those hard disk drives. Now, email abuse can be tackled by an electronic copy of the offender email that contains the message header, making sure that he's the one who's sending the emails out, as we saw it in the lab last time, that for every email there is an email header through which we can investigate that emails are coming from within the network or from outside the network. Make sure that your email outgoing and incoming relays which are open by default on your Exchange servers are being properly closed or monitored. If those relays are open, there are high chances that someone would use your identity and your server to send emails out, which seems like that you are sending those emails out, but it's not you actually. By looking at the header and the email address, header and the IP address, you can actually find out that who's sending those emails. For mails systems, especially the Exchange email servers that we have in the organizations, there is mailbox level backups maintained on the servers. So if in any case we want to recover the previous emails or anything, we can do that and we can investigate it for thorough investigations. Standard forensic tools and things must be used. Now we'll be using a web-based email investigation tool called FTK. We'll be using it in the in the regular lab on Wednesday, and you'll be able to see that what we are doing with that, and it would be investigating the header of the emails. Now the next thing which is quite important is industrial espionage. All suspected industrial espionage cases shall be treated as criminal investigations, because they might be using your email accounts, or your account will be used to send a copy of that email to an external email account, or sometimes in some organizations or the financial institutions, they are paying someone to be their puppet in your organization who will be forwarding all that information to the rival party or any other business which is in the same line of business. Digital investigator who's responsible for the disk and emails and other things investigation, they must be conducting the investigation, making sure that what's going on the network. Network specialist will be helping him in finding the overall trace of the network and communications. Now, The guidelines for that is determine whether the investigation involves possible industrial espionage incident or consult the corporate attorney that what kind of rules and regulations that we have in this high level of breach which was identified in your organization. Determine the information needed for any kind of investigation, and then the keywords and the list of the correct resources that you need in order to undermine any kind of investigations which would help you towards reaching the conclusion. Now planning the consideration is collect all the emails which are suspected that they must have been used for that kind of activity online, or initiate the physical surveillance, or even the surveillance from the cameras if something happened, if the PC was physically accessed or a person was around during that time in the offices, or it was done through VPN connections while sitting at home when we use our computers using the VPN facility. Now in that way, that brings us another point of securing our VPN tunnels and channels. Corporates, usually organizations, are providing VPN access to access your computers in offices while sitting at home. We must make sure that you are regularly changing your passwords for the VPN access, because if your VPN is compromised due to any reason, anyone from the outside will gain access to that PC and would do whatever they want to do, while you'll not be aware of that your PC is being used for any kind of activity like that. Now determining the suspect location, IP address, geographical location, where they are actually sitting, or study the work habits, what kind of activities, or a general tendency towards looking for information, whether it was there to damage the overall records which were there, deleting the records, changing the records, or just monitoring what's going on in the organization. Gather all personnel assigned to investigate, whoever can help you in that, and gather the resources to conduct the investigation. Then we have collect the logs and reports, whatever is required, and then interview the interrogation of the high-tech investigation which is there. We have covered it already. And then the next topic is to understand the data recovery from the workstations by using different softwares. Okay guys, so we are continuing with understanding the data recovery workstations and software. We must have dedicated machines on which we have all the tools installed, and powerful computers which are used for investigation. Now they are usually equipped with all the tools and softwares that you might be using in order to conduct different analysis. Investigations are conducted on computer in the forensics lab in data recovery, and computer forensics workstation is specially configured PC on which you will be conducting the forensics analysis. Then you'll have some write blockers as well to avoid altering the evidence, enable you to boot the Windows without writing the data to the evidence drive. I told you that there are some USB powered operating systems available like Ubuntu and SUSE Linux, where it comes in live CD or live USB format, that you can boot the computer using the external medium without affecting the internal hard drive which is installed on the machine. Now setting up a workstation means that workstation must be running the latest operating system. Windows 7 is the base, but I would recommend having the latest operating system. Further, the tools that you are using, you must check it that whether they are compatible with the latest operating system or not. Use a write blocker just to make sure that the evidence is intact, and the digital forensics acquisition tool, with the help of which you will be recovering the data. Forensic analysis tools, the target drive should receive the source suspected disk data, that on a drive on which you will be creating the backup or you'll be storing the stuff. Then spare PATA or SATA ports. Usually nowadays it's SATA or eSATA ports which are used in order to transfer the data. These ports play an important role because if you are trying to transfer the data, you need a very fast communication medium through which you can recover the data as fast as possible. The bigger the hard drive, the more time it takes in order to recover the data. Additional things could be it should have a network interface card, extra USB ports, FireWire if possible, SCSI cards, disk editor tools, or the floppy disks if they were used, or any older computer graphics viewer program with the help of which you can even view the hash codes or the meta tag of the images for the investigation purposes. And once we are conducting an investigation, we'll compile all this data which is recovered through our investigation workstation in the form of the evidences that we have noted down on the checklist that we have. We'll use the Bitstream tool in order to make sure that we are creating a 100% replica of the original hard drive without modifying the records or writing anything to the evidence disk. Then the forensics workstation examine your evidence and securely lock the original disk somewhere where you'll be using the copy of the original disk for the recovery purposes. Now, avoid damaging the evidence. Steps include that meet the IT manager to interview with him. That what steps should be taken in order to make sure that your evidence is intact. Place the evidence in a secure container. They are repeating the same thing. Carry the evidence to the lab. And then we'll secure the evidence by locking the container. And moving along, next is understanding Bitstream copies. What are they? We'll be covering it in our next lecture. That's it for today, guys. Thank you.